What's up, guys? Coach Powers here, and I want to address something, kind of the elephant in the room, for me anyway. Hate to talk about this because, I look at the Benzo community as one big family, and all the other coaches I think of as like my peers. We're all trying to help people. All of us have gone through this, and, working in this field, I can tell you it's hard. It's heavy, you guys know. You see what we all go through. Imagine doing this every day, several hours a day, talking to people off of ledges, talking to people that want to kill themselves, people that are disabled, people that have been suffering for years, people with severe mental illness, not just because of benzos, which is severe, not just because of all the manifestations that can happen during a prolonged acute period of immense suffering, coming off benzos, a period where you can lose your family, your job, your house, your possessions, develop other disabilities, all kinds of things like that. I mean, it's just such a incredible black hole. And we all have gone through it. And, we should be able to be friendly and be peers. And we should be able to reach out to each other and say, hey, can I get your advice on something? Or I heard this, or, this is what happens in, say, the field of psychology or the field of counselors. But what tends to happen as well is it becomes like a turf war. And I think there's a schism happening in the benzo community right now. There's, and I've seen this coming for years. And in a way, I'd like to think that I've been on the forefront of that, because when I came to this community, I was the first guy that I saw anyway that was saying things that were contradictive to the status quo of the benzo, the benzo established elders here, the Benzo Information Coalition, a bunch of others who have been evolving themselves over the years. I mean, first it was way more toxic, way more negative, and they had fixated opinions on things about what this was and how you went about treating it, if you could treat it, all kinds of things like that. And over the years, I've seen it grow and evolve, and it continuously evolve. Great, right? That's great. Benzo forums have continuously evolved. I was one of the biggest critics of benzo forums, and more recently I actually went on Benzo Warriors and did a 2-hour talk with them on a Zoom session. Now, just a couple years ago, they kicked me out. Truth be told, Benzo Warriors, up to until I actually did that talk, I was actually blocked, right? Which is kind of ironic. Me, Dave Powers, Coach Powers, is blocked. Why? Well, because I had told someone that if they needed an antidepressant, if they were on the edge, someone who was claiming that they were ready to kill themselves, I said, if you need an antidepressant, then, consider it, because I have seen like a small dose of Zoloft be very helpful. Despite what other people say, I've seen it many, many, many times. Well, I got blocked for, telling people to go on meds, which I didn't tell. I just said, if you're going to kill yourself, before you cause that, do something that's irreversible and you cause, so much pain to the people around you. Do anything you can to save your life. I think that's very fair. At the same time, the people in the group were telling people not to get on meds. So I thought it was a little bit hypocritical to say I'm banned because I told people to get on an SSRI, which I didn't, but yet telling them not to get on an SSRI was okay. And you saw, and I was subscribed at one point to like a dozen forums, and this was the behavior in all of them. And I've been very critical, to the point that I lost subscribers. Every time I put out a video and I, criticize this kind of behavior, I lost subscribers. I received letters, mail. At one point I had my email address up there, and I would receive 2 or 3 page letters that were just, just hurtful. Just, you're a piece of crap. You don't understand this. You're fake. You didn't go through this. You're hurting people, And then I would hear things in these letters from certain coaches. And you know what? At this point, I'm just going to, whether it's true or not, this is what I'm being told. But people like Dr. Jenn, and this is going to come back around full circle, because I have a direct quote from her, a few quotes now. But people would say things, like Dr. Jenn is the real coach. You're fake, and she says you're doing damage. And I would hear things like that, and so I would reach out to Dr. Jenn. Hey, can we have a conversation? Can maybe we do a podcast or something like that? she would ignore me, or maybe she didn't see the comments. And then finally, she a couple times said, "Oh, I'm very busy. Reach out to me later." At one point, I think the last time she said something like, "Reach out to me in 6 months." And I thought, 6 months? Like, what? You can't take 5 minutes to talk to me? 6 months? What kind of, what is that? So I said, okay, you know what? It's fine. I'm going to do my thing. You do your thing. And at the end of the day, this doesn't need to be, the Benzo turf wars. I mean, it's just crazy. But anyway, I've seen even Dr. Jenn's approach evolve over the years. When I first found her, she didn't really, from what I recall, wasn't all really about moving more. She was more about, if I recall right, positivity, support, veganism, and I believe spirit or faith, right? And then over the years, it became more about moving more. But at first, there was this attitude, guys, and many of you may not know this because you might be new. Maybe you've only been here in the Benzo community for the last year or 2 or 3. But going back several years, the word of advice, the general consensus was, don't move more. You need to rest. You need to wait out the storm, lay in bed, rest, guys. Don't do things that are tough. Still to this day, from what I understand from multiple clients that, because there's a lot of overlap in this community. Angie Peacock, Dr. Jenn, Dr. B, there's a bunch of us that overlap, Baylissa, and so I have clients that have spoken to all of these people or work with all these people, or they're in their groups. And I hear over and over again from Dr. Jenn, the ones that are in Dr. Jenn's group, that Jenn says that therapy doesn't work for Benzo people, which is insane to me because it's like, Jenn, you provide therapy. That's what your coaching is, right? I mean, what else is it? Are you just for information? We'll just put out a PDF or something, a video with all your information for free and leave it at that. But you're providing coaching. You have group therapy. This is what it is. It's quote unquote therapy. So therapies do work. If you don't believe they work, then why are you doing it? Of course it works. Now maybe she's meaning very specific things like psychoanalysis or something. Well, then I would agree. Yeah, certain therapies don't work, but that's true with all therapy. Certain therapies don't work for everything. Just like you don't go to a podiatrist for a heart problem. You got to find the right therapy. You got to find the right doctor, the right modality. And if you do, it can be very helpful. Behavioral stuff is very helpful. CBT, DBT, mindfulness, exposure therapy, all of this stuff is immensely powerful. And I can tell you firsthand, and not just firsthand, but and granted is a little bit anecdotal, I've worked with probably 1,000 people at this point, and I've seen every one of them move forward using these techniques. So that needs to be said, that, if this is what she's saying, that therapy doesn't work, that's not true. And it's a little bit hypocritical, I think. But then again, I might just misunderstand what she's saying. But this is what I'm hearing from many clients. They come to me and say, well, therapy doesn't work. Who are you getting this from? Well, Dr. Jenn said that. But I want to move on to something which inspired this video, because all of that said, I've just ignored it. I just said, well, agree to disagree. Well, Dr. Jenn said, if you don't eat a vegan diet, you won't get better, or you must eat a vegan diet, or something to that effect, that you really need to be eating vegan. I said, well, yeah, a clean diet is really important, and sure, vegans is one of the best diets on the planet. On the other hand, it can also cause you depression, anxiety. It can change the biome of your stomach, which can also change your mental health and affect your mental health. And if you're going to go vegan or pescatarian or anything, a word of caution, go really slow. Ease into it. Don't just cut out all this stuff overnight, because it really your system takes a hit. It's too much too quick. And especially that limbic system that really wants stability and predictability and routine. If you suddenly change anything big, even moving to a new house, changing careers, suddenly implementing an extreme exercise program, all this stuff, the stressors it puts on your amygdala can be overwhelming and cause you a setback. So, that needs to be said. Now I want to move on to a comment that I recently was shown. I had a client that took a screenshot, sent this to me, and this is not the first time. I mean, it's happened many times. And what happened was she had posted, or somebody in her group, in Dr. Jenn's group, posted a screenshot or shared a link of my video with Benzo Warriors. I did a talk on rumination. And they said, basically saying, hey, what do you think about this guy? I've seen this video. It seems really helpful, referring to mine. And Dr. Jenn said, and I'm going to quote her comment here. I'm not familiar with his work, meaning my work, which is, I think that's, how do you not familiar with my work? I mean, of course you are. You've had a lot of criticism over the years, but okay. I'm not familiar with his work, but a word of caution. Some benzo coaches have reportedly told our community that symptoms after 6 or 9 months are your underlying, in big bold letters, your underlying issues. This is not true, in capital letters. This is not true, exclamation mark. I don't know David's stance on this, just letting you know to be careful believing anything negative. We do heal, as symptoms can last for quite some time and not, capitalization, not be your, in quotations, your issues. I find this comment loaded and also a little bit hypocritical. For one, she's sort of taking aim at me while pretending not to take aim at me. I mean, why would you make a comment? If you don't know my stance, don't say it. Why would you say that? I don't know your stance on something. I wouldn't say, I don't know Dr. Jenn's stance, but, and then insert something that would scare people. In saying it in a way that sort of suggests in like an ethical way that maybe there's some smoke here. Maybe you've heard enough that, that this is a topic that you would bring up. Otherwise, why bring it up? Right? Would you say that about Angie or anybody else? Why me? Right? It's to dissuade people, to put it in the water that, man, maybe there's something wrong with this guy. I'd be cautious. I've never told anyone, to be clear, that after 6 or 9 months, it's your only underlying issue. Never said that, right? I mean, by the AMA and the APA's own admission in literature, they say that protracted withdrawal can last a year or more. So first off, I'm a research scientist, so why would I disagree with the literature? Secondly, I had protracted withdrawal for 2 to 3 years. So why would I disagree with my own stance, my own experiences, right? And she says, symptoms can last for quite some time and not be your issues. Again, never said that. Never said that. But to be fair, symptoms can be more than just benzo withdrawal, because benzo withdrawal is more than just chemical or bind, this elusive term that sort of umbrellas everything and seems like, it's their new catchword of the day. And I'm not saying bind doesn't work. There's a place for it for sure, but it's been used, and I've got a whole video on this that I can, you can listen to and hear my opinions on this. But symptoms can last for quite some time and not be your issues. Well, true, but what about your pre-existing issues? What, they disappear when you come off benzos? Why would coming off benzos and becoming much more anxiety-induced, depressed, developing insomnia, health anxieties, psychosomatic, somatoform disorders, trauma, metabolic deficiencies, how could that not, how come coming off of benzos not impact your pre-existing condition? How could you not develop more manifested conditions? And in a recent article or blog that she had posted, I saw someone, again, we each have our little army, and people, shared it with me and said, right after I had put out a video being critical on bind or bend or whatever, someone took a screenshot and said, I think she's talking about you here. And then in her article or blog, she says basically that, when I came off benzos, I went through bend. It was real, and it wasn't my pre-existing condition because it didn't exist anymore. And I didn't develop new things, which I find just right there alone, she should have been held accountable. Like, people should have said, wait. You mean you had trauma, you had addictions, you had all these reasons why you were on benzos in the first place. You went through 8 years of hell coming off of this thing and getting better, from what I understand of her story. And your pre-existing condition disappeared? It's like, Jenn, you're a doctor. You're in the field of psychology. When has a pre-existing condition disappeared? Ever? When has someone had an anxiety disorder or been through trauma or something to that effect, took a benzo for several years, came off it in a hellacious way, and their pre-existing condition disappeared? It's not on the table anymore? How is that not on the table? And how would you go through all of that and not manifest something? Insomnia, something, nothing worse, manifested in protracted, acute, horrendous withdrawal for several years? It just doesn't add up, guys. That's now, maybe I'm misinterpreting what she said. I read the blog. That's in black and white. That's what I was reading, and that seems to be what she's saying in defense of mind. So I think she kind of stepped on her foot there instead of saying, look, yeah, I had a pre-existing condition. Yeah, when I got off benzos, it was worse. Yeah, I developed manifested conditions, all kinds of stuff as I was coming off benzos, and I had to work on those things. Maybe it was agoraphobia, sleep issues, etc. But I also had bend. I also had a direct neurological impact, and it wasn't a side effect or just withdrawal. There was an actual effect from the drug. I wouldn't argue that. I believe in bend in that regard, sure. But it's starting to get a little crazy, I think, here with the explanations, you know. But I really take offense a little bit to this sort of passive aggressive finger pointing and accusation here that some benzo coaches have reportedly told our community that symptoms after 6 to 9 months are your underlying conditions. This is not true. Well, first off, yes, it can be true, Jen. To play devil's advocate in the bigger picture, it absolutely can be true in condition or in addition, I should say, to acute benzo withdrawal. It's very possible, guys, to have acute benzo withdrawal. And then, so let's put that on layer one, acute benzo withdrawal symptoms. Boom. I'll put bend on there too. That's 2. Pre-existing condition, re-emerging. 3. Manifested conditions emerging. 4. All of those things are possible. And if Jenn would have me on a podcast or have a conversation, we could discuss this. And if I'm wrong, she could show me the errors of my way. I would love that, because I'm not here to hurt anybody. I want to be the best coach I can be. I want to help people, sincerely want to help people. I went through it just like her and you all. I almost died on this thing. I lost everything. It took years away from my life. You know, I'm passionate about this. I spent so much time, so much money, so much sacrifice to try to be in this community, to be a source of hope. But this is just not true. That, you know, you cannot make absolutes like this. And she's the only one that seems to be making these absolutes. I'm not. I never said that symptoms after 6 or 9 months are not your underlying, or symptoms after 6 or 9 months are your issues. It's not true. And here's the thing. Here's to really drive it home, guys. This is why it's not true even more for me, because that's not even my philosophy or my perspective on healing, right? It's not a stage 1 versus stage 2 versus 3 kind of phenomenon. Benzo, first off, you have to understand my vision of what benzo withdrawal is. And it's a multi-headed beast. It's not just chemical withdrawal symptoms, tinnitus and things like that. It's many things. Yeah, there is a degree that your pre-existing condition will be there. And for some time, it can be worse. Yeah, there are manifested conditions, right? But there's also benzo itself. The withdrawal feature is multi-headed. And this is why even years later, like 10 years later, I had severe insomnia after COVID. And I remember there was a night where I was sitting there thinking, God, this is deja vu of benzo. This feels just like benzos. And if I was in a group or around people that said, hey, you can have a setback 10 years later, I would maybe believe that. But only it didn't come out of the blue. It was insomnia. But I asked myself, why is it so reminiscent of benzos? Why does it feel so much like it? And that's because I was going through severe insomnia during the time of benzos. Right? That's why. It feels the way because that's what I was going through. Health anxiety, panic disorder, deep depression, somatoform disorder, DP, DR, restless leg, akathisia, inner restlessness, all of that, the spectrum of all of that, brain fog, right? So anytime you're going to have these symptoms during benzos, at post-benzo, it's going to feel like benzos because initially it is part of benzos. Benzos is a multi-headed beast. You can't, pretty much for most of us, you cannot go through benzo withdrawal and just be chemical. Yes, it's chemical. That's head number 1. Head number 2, depression. Head number 3, anxiety. Head number 4, health anxiety, phobias, panic disorder, insomnia, somatic disorders. That means bodily stuff, pelvic floor, stomach issues, vision problems, hearing, feeling like you can't swallow, the health anxiety or OCD, intrusive thoughts, rumination disorder. This is all the manifestations, all the many heads of this thing. So as you're coming off of benzos in 6 to 9 months, you're still going to have many of those things, and those things will still feel that way. Even 6 to 9 years later, if you haven't beaten agoraphobia, let's say, you're sitting in just with agoraphobia years later, that agoraphobia is like a trauma response. It's a reaction, a reflection of the trauma you went through during benzos, and you will feel like benzos the entire time because you had the agoraphobia during benzos. And remember, guys, agoraphobia isn't just, oh, I can't leave the house. No, agoraphobia means your limbic system is responding as if everything around you were a danger, as if you were sitting in the ocean at night and sharks were swimming around you and bumping you, taking little nibbles at you. That's what agoraphobia is. It's the constant feeling that you are not safe and your world is shrinking, right? So if you're going through that, which I went through it immediately with benzos, the entire ride, it gets really hard to see the forest from the trees at some point. 2-3 years later, you're still thinking you're looking at protracted, but maybe you're looking at more agoraphobia, right? And so I never told someone that they weren't going through protracted, even 5 or 6 years later. I've never gaslighted anyone, and I wouldn't argue that. First off, we can't argue that, right? And I'm a guy that tries to deal with facts and reality. I don't make crazy assertions about things. So I can't tell someone they're not going through something. But what I will tell them, if they come to me years later and they're agoraphobic and they still feel like they're in protracted benzo withdrawal, I say, well, you know what? What else can we do? Let's try to at least approach the agoraphobia and let's see what happens. And you know what? 9.9 times out of 10 happens once we start working on the agoraphobia. At least, I'm not saying it's a cure-all, but at least their general symptoms start to dissipate and come down, and they start to have a quality of life. Because agoraphobia is a problem. Obsessive rumination disorder is a problem. And I think there's a disagreement here in the genesis of this, the causality of it all. That, I think Dr. Jenn, from what I understand, sort of believes that it's this residual problem of benzo, and therapy doesn't work, and therefore there's nothing you can really do with that. You just have to wait it out. And me and her cannot, if that's true, me and her could not be more philosophically different. Because waiting it out was what almost killed me, And I've wanted to have her on the podcast to talk about all this because I don't want to hearsay. I don't want to make, even as I'm saying all this, I'm hesitant because I don't want to say something that she hears or gets back to her and say, I don't think that way. I didn't say that. And then I look like the ass. But this is just what, screenshots and what many people have reported to me. So if this is not true, well, then I'll tell you what, Dr. Jenn, this is what people are saying. This is what your people are saying. This is their interpretation or impression from you, that therapy doesn't work. And it gets uglier. I know she said things to people. Like I've had clients where she told my clients to, you need to pull yourself up by your big girl panties. You need to get it together. I would never say that to someone. So it's like, Jenn, if you want to really, if you really want to air dirty laundry on this topic, it's like, you're not innocent. You've said some things too. So I find it very hypocritical. You told people that, I've had clients at least report this, that when things weren't going right for them and maybe they didn't switch to a vegan diet, then they were told, well, the reason you're not getting better is because you didn't switch to a vegan diet. I mean, it's gaslighting crap if that's true. It's gaslighting. I mean, show these studies. Where are the studies that show vegan cures benzos? I mean, now who's making the crazy claims? It's just so hypocritical, right? Like she's claiming that I'm making crazy claims, but if that's true, you're literally telling people that they're not getting better because they're not vegan. It's nonsense, right? Vegan is not the end all say all of mental illness, mental health recovery. Certainly not benzos. So, I've been quiet for years, guys. This has been going on. So maybe some of you are going to be put off by this video and think, God, Dave, you sound really negative for a guy who's very positive. But you got to understand, I've been poked and prodded. I've received many emails. I could read you emails that cutting me down, putting me down, making crazy assertions. And Dr. Jenn's name always comes up in these emails. For someone who doesn't know me, she seems to have a lot of input. Now again, disclaimer, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these are just loyal fans of hers and they're, kind of fighting this little turf war outside of her. And if that's the case, then I apologize. But then when I read comments like this, and I'm looking at the screenshot, like a direct screenshot that someone took a picture of. And it's like, why say it? Why, if you don't know anything about, if you're not familiar with my work, then why would you offer a word of caution, right? Because to offer the word of caution suggests you are familiar with my criticism at least, right? So maybe before you offer the criticism, be familiar with my work. That's what I did. I looked into her work. I watched her videos. I read her story. I talked to clients and I asked them questions that worked with her, right? So just a little word out there. Just felt like, I'm kind of sitting back passively for the last 5 years, getting poo slung at me, and trying to be the bigger person and not address any of these things. But this one, and again, guys, going back to this like idea of a turf war, and this is not just me talking. I mean, many of you probably see it. There's a rumbling in the community, and I've talked to, a lot of other coaches, a lot of other people that run forums and things, and this is the talk. Like there's an ideological difference happening here. And again, in a way, I kind of think or have a sneaking suspicion that I had something to do with this a little bit. Because like I said, when I arrived onto the scene, I was the black sheep. Nobody would play with me. The Benzo Information Coalition, Benzo Buddies, all these forums, Dr. Jenn, all these people I've reached out to, and they want nothing to do with me. Isn't that crazy? I'm one of the most respected people in this field. I've got a pretty decent following. I've made a Benzo feature film that I funded almost, 50% out of my pocket. I'm going to put out so much free content. I've worked with so many people for free. I spend probably an hour of my morning every day for the last 6 to 7 years answering questions and giving advice and trying to help people for free. But I'm not at the table with these guys. I can't sit with the big kids, right? I don't get to play with these guys. If people post my videos in certain forums, I've seen, again, screenshots and things where they're deleted. They don't want nothing to do with me. So that's fine. Really, I don't care. Half of these people I'm more educated and have more of a background than. Sorry if that sounds egotistic, but it's true. I'm not going to be put down by John the mechanic and Patty the barber on issues of, mental health. So there you have it, guys. That'll probably turn some of you off. Probably some of you will unsubscribe, or, I'm sure there'll be some criticism here. And I hate being negative, because this whole channel is about being positive, to tell you guys that healing happens and you will heal. And that's one thing me and Dr. Jenn definitely agree on. And to be fair, we agree on way more than we disagree. I mean, we should be best friends. We both went through this. We both survived it. We both dedicated a lot of our life to helping others in this area. We both are coaches. We both have an extensive background in psychology. We should be friends. We should be helping each other. This shouldn't be a damn turf war. So after this, I don't really want to address this anymore. I don't really want screenshots sent to me. And I just, I'm really done with it. I don't want to be negative. I want to focus on what I can do. What I'm doing, I want to make a documentary. I want to put doctors in a hot seat. I want to get, big pharma in the hot seat. I want to talk to lawyers. I want to explore this issue as deep as I can. I want to put out my feature film on this. I want to put out a recovery program. I just want to be a big force in this area, a big kind of like a lighthouse, a big advocate, and someone that can tell you that not only will you get better, but here's some real methods that can help you. Yeah, some therapy can really be effective, guys. That's a fact. And yeah, sometimes, it is true. Sometimes 6 or 9 months out, that your underlying issues may actually be more related to the manifestations or the other heads of benzo, which again, they're not different than benzo. I hope you guys hear me. I'm just saying benzos is bigger than chemical withdrawal. But it's completely possible that even 2 or 3 years out, you're having protracted benzo withdrawal, that your brain still hasn't healed. And it's entirely possible that you have bend, right? So hear me. I'm not saying any of those things don't exist. I'm just adding another layer to it too, saying that also, guys, benzo is more than a chemical problem. It's the manifestation, or quickly the manifestation. I don't mean like a secondary manifestation. I mean, the symptoms, if you want to say depression, DPDR, akathisia, all of this as symptoms of benzo withdrawal. These things can persist for years. but we can also we can put a dent in those things. We can start to change our brains in the way we perceive these things. We can engage in neuroplasticity and promote new growth and better synaptic functions in our brain. That's a fact. If you have extreme rumination, we can work on that. Therapy does work. Dr. Jenn provides therapy. I mean, I'm reading texts where she's talking about hope and acceptance and forgiveness and all these things that are therapy, right? So therapy does work. Maybe not Freudian, but you know what? Freudian doesn't work for everything. No therapy works for everything. You got to find the right fit for things. And sure, when you're in acute withdrawal, man, therapy is going to feel like it doesn't do much. But learning how to forgive, learning how to accept, learning how to get out of your own way, learning how not to reinforce the mental illness. These things can be life-changing during the process, and especially when you're coming out of it. So there you go, guys. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Am I wrong on this? And if so, help me see the light. Where did I go wrong on this? Outside of that, like I said, I don't want to dwell on it. I open my channel, my doors to Dr. Jenn. I would love to have a conversation with her. I don't think she's the enemy, nor than any of these other people that have been critical of me. But I will ask that until you are familiar with my work, don't, a word of caution, don't caution other people. It's not ethical. It doesn't show a lot of integrity, I've never badmouthed her. I've been very supportive to her over the years. So just, extend some of that courtesy back this way, please.